In the late 1950s, movies coming from Hollywood were becoming stale and formulaic. The big studios controlled most of the creative process, producing safe films that emphasized easy-to-follow narratives and standard plot lines. In response to these traditional films, French filmmakers such as Agnes Varda and Jean-Luc Godard pioneered new techniques in filmmaking. Instead of following the formula, their films de-emphasized the plot, focusing more on feelings and blending the lines of narrative and reality. The films from this time period became known as La Nouvelle Vague, or French New Wave. Filmmakers began rejecting the idea of cinema being just a commercial product and instead embraced films as an art form. An emphasis on individual style and vision was core of these films. Each film reflected the unique perspectives and passion of the filmmaker behind them. Directors of the French New Wave rejected classical narratives of the time. Their films were smaller, personal, and focused on the rhythms and textures of daily life. Agnes Varda's distinctive style is evident in nearly every aspect of Cleo from 5 to 7. The film is a total work of her creative vision. Cleo from 5 to 7 takes place over a normal afternoon in Paris, played out in nearly real time. We follow Cleo as she wanders the city, encountering different people and experiences. We experience life through Cleo's eyes, creating a sense of intimacy that allows us to explore her inner feeling and emotions. Cleo is a normal, relatable person, opposed to heroes such as Lawrence from Arabia in the same year.
No prisoners! No prisoners!
The emphasis on real people and their lives extends past the characters. The film was shot in real locations around Paris, and the people in the background are not acting. French New Wave filmmakers also pioneered in their editing styles. Their films feature long takes,
que recouvre la mer. Mes plages se dévident sans toi, sans toi.
and a lack of continuity editing, instead utilizing jump cuts. We experience Cleo's emotional state as the film moves back and forth through her memories using jump cuts. These techniques further highlight the focus on blending the real and surreal. Cleo from 5 to 7 became a landmark work of art, representing a whole new wave of filmmakers to follow suit and influencing films all the way into the next century. Across the sea, 30 years later, something similar was brewing. In the late 1980s, commercialization was dominating American cinema. High-concept blockbusters served as entertainment rather than art.
I'm Batman.
Once again, filmmakers desired creative freedom. Starting in the 1990s and extending to the early 2000s, directors once started deviating from the norm and returning to more personal stories. This cycle of deviation from the popular paralleled the sentiments of the French New Wave. Richard Linklater was one of the most notable directors coming out of this indie film boom. His Before trilogy, featuring Before Sunrise, follows two strangers who meet on a train and decide to spend the night getting to know each other, as they believe they will never see each other again. His style was naturalistic, incorporating long takes and heavy dialogue, which drives the film. The two leads, Jesse and Celine, have long-winded philosophical conversations about the human experience. Linklater's film draws many similarities to those of the French New Wave. Sofia Coppola is another director working at this time who took after the French New Wave. Her 2003 film Lost in Translation closely resembles movement films that came before. The two main characters do regular things like attending a wedding, visiting shrines, and trying Japanese cuisine. The bond they form is the opposite of a Hollywood romance, and more closely resembles interactions of everyday life. Its loosely connected, meandering story calls back to the films of the New Wave. Its visuals incorporate signature slow, contemplative shots and muted color palettes. Even the dream pop soundtrack was personally selected by Coppola to invoke the feelings and emotions she desired to express. Our last example from the indie boom is Michael Gondry's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Many of its elements can be traced back to the French New Wave. Despite the sci-fi piece of the story, the setting is realistic and attempts to depict real people with real conflicts and real emotions. The film also features a nonlinear story being told backwards at times and forwards in others. Joel can be compared to Cleo, as both characters are normal who are seeking a content and happy life. In American Independent Cinema, Jeff King writes, American independent films are produced in an ultra-low budget world far removed from that of the Hollywood blockbuster. They adopt formal strategies that abandon or dismantle the conventions of linear fluency typical of classic Hollywood style. They offer provocative perspectives on social issues, a rarity in Hollywood. While the dominant culture of the time was epic action movies featuring special effects and spawning endless sequels, indie films would become increasingly popular. Indie movies premiered at Sundance and spread to audiences in the festival circuit. This popularity allowed filmmakers to make more movies like this again. The resurgence of films with strong authorship, nonlinear storytelling, and an emphasis on realism can all trace their roots back to the French New Wave.